Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited because I have a good friend here. I've been trying to set this up for a while. My buddy Vera Kutsenko, who's like the AI expert genius. I know all you guys want to know about AI and everything about AI. Well, she knows all. And we've been talking about doing this, and it's taken a while, but here we are. Vera, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. Super excited to talk about this topic with you and so happy to have finally figured out a time right before the holiday season. Uh,
Yeah. So,
yes.
guys, Vera and I met like on the conference circuit, really. See her at all the conferences. You just became friendly and have talked about this, but super busy with things, and it took a while. But she came up with the idea to talk about the AI gap in medical affairs and why 95% of Gen AI projects fail. But before we get into it, I mean, that's what we're going to talk about. Before we get into it, I'd love, Vera, for you to do an introduction. Just kind of tell everybody who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. Name is Vera, founder and CEO at Atrix AI. We work closely with medical affairs teams to help them operationalize AI so they're not in the 95%, but rather in the 5% from our discussion today. And I'll throw out a really fun fact. Over 10 years ago, when I was working at Facebook, one of my projects was actually to take news articles that you would share at news or like on the feed at the time and to use AI to help summarize those articles. So it's funny because you fast forward to now when Gen AI, now with ChatGPT has been kind of societally viral for what 3 years, and you can probably do that now in 5 minutes. And back then that project was like months long, right? And definitely like very hard to accomplish. So it's very much like a full circle moment, I feel like, in a lot of ways to see what's happening now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And we're going to get into it. Before we do, guys, I just wanted to recognize for the past, like, geez, I'm going to say couple weeks, even couple months, I've been talking to so many people that are either out of work or are desperately on the job market. Guys, hang in there. I know it's a tough time. We got the holidays coming up. So I just want to give you guys a word of encouragement. It's not you. It might just be the market. It's timing. Things are going to get better. You're going to find a job. Check out my book. This is not a shameless plug. I really think you should buy my book. It's called Job Search Mastery: How to Win Your Dream Job, only because it's helping so many people. But I just wanted to mention that because this episode is going to come out like around Thanksgiving. So want to make sure that, I had a real brief word of encouragement for you guys. So Vera, let's get into this. And let's start with the basics because you mentioned the AI gap in medical affairs. So tell us, like, what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when it comes to the AI gap in terms of what I see when it comes to teams, over the last like year to year and a half, we've been doing a lot of training and operationalizing AI. And there's a sense of, from a training perspective, everyone wants to learn about it, and that's wonderful. And you absolutely need the training piece of it. But what we oftentimes will see will happen is you do the training, maybe you open up Copilot for that 30 minutes, right, of the training to try out the different prompts. And then you see after that training, things can oftentimes fall off. And part of it is that you want the training to enable consistency in terms of integrating those skill sets, right? Because there's a reason why you're doing it. And the gap is almost going from that training to trying to operationalize AI solutions without getting folks properly set up to use AI consistently.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna, are you
It's that
editing?
learning curve, right? It's so you're talking about like kind of like that learning curve is the gap where it's like you can learn something, there's training, but then it's like you can't just expect it to be operationalized because there's that period where people just have to kind of play around with it and figure it out. Like I think I understand what a prompt is. Right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about for example, like when the iPhone came out, right?
Mhm.
Was the first thing that you did was it, read a book about iPhones, right? And how to use them. You probably went, you got your actual phone and then like you started playing around with it. You saw the texting feature and you're like, oh, cool. It's virtual buttons now instead of like physical buttons. You saw, oh, you can send images or like, oh, that didn't work or like, oh, I can't unsend it, right? So you learn what works and what doesn't by actually using it. So in essence, I feel like with AI, it's the same thing where with the trainings you are getting some of that practice, but you need to almost continue that practice. And the second point there, I feel like is um, having proper expectations. I think oftentimes if you try one thing and you don't get the result you're hoping for, that doesn't necessarily mean the AI model can't get you there. It's that you need to be open to, experimenting a bit, or maybe this thing fails and that's okay. Because similar to any new technology that you're trying out, you're going to have things not work. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes also have this undue expectation of AI to like perfectly work on everything.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. Like no one reads the instructions. I didn't
Right,
read the instructions on my iPhone. I just grabbed it and started playing around with it.
right.
And you go through training, and the training should be the instructions, but at the same time, until you use it and make it a part, like make it a habit and part of your routine, you're not going to get good at it. And I think part of the reason there's a gap, and this is just me in layman's terms, part of the reason there's a gap is because people aren't, they don't, they're not always receptive to change. And there's a change in routine, there's a change in habit that and behavior that has to happen in order to really truly adopt AI. So I think one of the things you should do is schedule it, put it on your calendar, schedule time to get on whatever tool you're supposed to use, whatever training you got, you received, put time in your calendar to implement that. And that's how you know that it gets operationalized. So let's talk about, you had said that 95% of Gen AI projects fail. So let's kind of break that down and figure out why there's such a big disconnect between the expectations and the actual results.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I feel like with the premise of executing and operationalizing AI, oftentimes what how typically teams can approach it that can set up the project to potentially fail would be one, going in with the wrong expectation. So maybe if I had to summarize, it would be like two to three things. I think one, oftentimes folks are looking at AI as a hammer and they're trying to find any nail to use this hammer on. And they look at AI as AI to solve literature review, AI to solve field insights versus starting with the problem first.
Mm,
So, meaning, if we look at our team's objectives, right, or as an individual, if I look at like my day to day, right, or week to week, which things are taking the most amount of time that will help me achieve my objectives, personally or professionally, to the team, to the org level. They're typically not starting there, rather than they're starting at the feature level. So what I mean is we need a chatbot versus we're trying to solve insights reporting, or we're trying to solve the literature review process because we spent half of our time on that, where we want to spend more of our time on strategy. So I think
mm.
that's one key one.
Got you. So let's talk in medical affairs specifically. Where do you see most teams stand right now, like as you look at your clients in their AI journey?
Yeah, so I would say there are kind of, I would say three buckets or maybe three phases of the journey. I think the first phase of the journey is generally the change management piece. So this is kind of what we're talking about initially with the trainings. People have to be comfortable with the concept. They have to understand how AI can benefit them versus what are kind of like the risks and downfalls, if you will. So a lot of folks are starting to establish trust when it comes to AI by doing training. So there are some
Mm,
folks that are still at kind of that stage. Then the second stage, I would say, is really folks who started to then establish Copilot Enterprise or GPT Enterprise, which kind of ties in with the training, right? Then the bucket after that is companies who realize that Copilot and GPT are only going to get you so far, right?
Mhm.
You can't expect Copilot and GPT to review a million pieces of literature, to dig through all of your medical strategy plans, and like come up with all of the unmet needs that you should be targeting with your content. It's just not realistic. So then that goes more into kind of custom AI or more advanced AI solutions where teams are starting to pilot various use cases. So I would say a lot of folks are in that bucketed category. And then there's few who were in this bucket last year who are now starting to scale what they saw work from the previous year when it comes to some of these like custom AI solutions. So it's almost like training enterprise GPT copilot to piloting early high impact use cases to now like we're going to scale some of
Mm.
those cases.
That makes sense. And so, why do you think the adoption of AI for medical affairs organizations has been challenging
Yeah.
compared to like other industries?
Yeah, and I think part of it comes because medical affairs, is they're such scientific experts,
Mm.
right? Everyone's a PharmD, MD, PhD, like so absolutely knowledgeable about their therapeutic areas and how science and proper education to clinicians and patients needs to be done. AI is also a very specialized field. And, while they're MDs, PharmDs, they're not AI, PharmDs or AI PhDs. And I think because AI can feel sometimes like this black box of how do I use it? When do I use it for what? There's almost this kind of gap of communication of medical affairs understanding, okay, I have this problem. So how do I understand the language of AI to know how to solve my problem? So what ends up happening, and this ties back to the hammer analogy, is a team of medical affairs knows literature reviews the problem. Okay, great. So now I have to go and find a literature, AI or tech solution. So then now they start engaging with partners or maybe their internal IT team to build something out. And then the challenge becomes in communicating with
Mm.
with the IT team or the vendor partner in how to translate my literature review problem to know how to evaluate whether a vendor is the right fit vendor or how to tell internal IT teams, like, here's what I want built. So what ends up happening sometimes is you might work with an internal IT team or you pick a vendor partner and then only 3, 6, 9 months later you realize that there's actually limitations you might have not known about in that process, or IT delivers the project and then you realize, oh, actually this doesn't fit our needs, so now
Mm.
we have to go back to the drawing board and iterate again and again. And this is where I see one of the big execution gaps. And part of the reason why I think the 95% exists is because there isn't that like common translation, if you will, that helps bridge the needs with the IT requirements.
And you said to me that technology isn't the problem. You said it's culture, governance, and people. Can you unpack that a little bit? Explain that?
Well, I think some of those points that you talked about or that we just covered are kind of encapsulated in that, in the sense that, you need the right change management, which kind of comes with training, it comes with leadership, right? Setting up expectations that you should use Copilot and you should be open with an experimental mindset and having champions within those teams who are AI forward, if you will, showing others, right, how they're leveraging AI to just help the entire team. And that's kind of, I would say, like the change management, like cultural piece of enabling.
I get you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, oh, go ahead.
No, I get you. I think we're still talking about the same issue, right? It's all kind of that adoption and operationalizing it and making it a new standard for how people are going to work. I love the idea because you have me thinking as you're talking about, starting with the problem. Like I really kind of feel like that's something that organizations really need to rely on as they continue to expand their efforts in AI versus just categorically saying, okay, it's for this, this, and this. Because we hear so much about use cases. oh, you should be using it for this. Well, is that solving your problem, or are you just saying that you need to use it for that?
Right. Well, and maybe for, for that team or company that's speaking about AI for that one use case, that is also tied to a core problem for them. But
Mhm.
like, if that's not a core problem for you, I mean, you could use AI, you could spend a lot of money using it, but like, is it worth the ROI, right? And you're right. I mean, so many trade shows, we see various use cases, right? Or folks talk about how they're applying AI. So it's almost like collectively we're aggregating, like, here's a library of use cases. So, oh, should we pick from a menu versus, hey, what's my biggest problem? Is my biggest problem, helping identify the right patients because I'm in rare disease, or helping educate clinicians on how to identify the right patients? Well, if that's the highest unlock opportunity and problem, then how do we solve that? And maybe
Mhm.
sometimes AI is like not the solution. Do you know, like maybe you don't need it sometimes. So, but
Yeah. No,
what one
maybe it's a group, maybe it's a department, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a committee. Maybe you already have the solution and you're just throwing it at AI because that's the new way to do things.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe. Um,
No,
but I do like hearing about use cases because I think it's really interesting to see what people are doing. And again, to your point, how that's solving their problems. And then it gives you the incentive to like, well, I'm going to try that.
yes.
Right. Um,
And I think to add to what you're saying, where I think sharing use cases is extremely helpful, is to really plant seeds of ideas. Because maybe in seeing, okay, AI can be applied in this way, it doesn't mean that I, as a team, have to apply it this way, but maybe this process seems in parallel to another process that is relevant for my team.
mhm.
And then I can kind of translate that. So ironically, actually, maybe use cases can be helpful in bridging that gap we talked about between IT language, if you will, or properly evaluating vendors and like the actual business needs of medical affairs teams.
Yeah. Let's talk about skills
Mhm.
and what capabilities medical affairs professionals need to have nowadays to speak AI.
Yeah, I mean, I will say to your earlier point about really encouraging folks who are in the job process. One thing I've heard consistently at trade shows, like we recently co-hosted the AI Immersion Lab with Medical Affairs, and a lot of the leaders that were at the lab talked a lot about trying to source for folks for their team who had a medical background and AI knowledge. So it is something that I'm hearing too on the ground that's kind of bubbling up as a skill set to have. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then I think from a skills perspective, the best way, honestly, is to just use Copilot or use GPT, whether it's in your personal life, because that'll help you get familiar with it. Just like you use a phone in your personal life, so then you also know how to use it in your professional life, right?
Right.
And using that, and also from having a previous career, like if you were an MSL, right, you already know the pain points of an MSL because you've been an MSL.
Mhm.
So the more you kind of experiment with that technology, the more you'll able to, the pieces will click and you'll start to get ideas for how even a tool like Copilot or ChatGPT can be helpful on the day to day.
Right.
So I think, well, I'm curious on your perspective, Tom, on this as well from a recruiting standpoint.
Well, it's funny what you just said. I'm like, wait a second. Let me see if I got this straight. So you're saying that you went to this lab and they were talking about this thing bubbling up about how AI is sourcing candidates. I'm like, geez, I'm out of a job. That's it. They don't need me anymore.
The quintessential fear of AI. I mean, that's an interesting point because there's also been, I think New York Times recently put out an article about new grads, struggling
Yeah.
to find jobs. But I've not dug into the statistics that are around that. But, personally, as a leader who is also recruiting and sourcing, I actually would be totally fine with junior talent because they tend to be the ones who use AI. And
Yeah.
I do think in the new world, with this new technology evolving, the more comfortable folks get with using AI, the more things that you can do, the more, the things you can be productive on and actually become competitive in the job market. So I actually have a very maybe opposing viewpoint to the statistics, but
Yeah. No, and I think that when you look at both scenarios, the scenario of me jokingly saying my job's going to be replaced by I just think that there's certain things that a human's going to do a lot better than a machine. And again, coupled with what you were saying about hiring, whether it's a junior candidate or any candidate, you as a human need to win the job. I need to prove my worth and my value because if I'm more valuable than AI, then my clients are going to come to me versus using a machine. It's the same thing with a job seeker or job applicant. If they can show their value to the organization. So you as a business owner and as a CEO, you want people that are going to bring value to you, to your organization, help your organization grow. So how are you going to do that? Yeah, there's going to be certain things you're going to do with machines, but there's going to be people that you need on your team that are going to do it. So I think that's the distinction for me.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I mean, I would almost look for people who use AI all the time because I'm like, that's great. You're very familiar with it because and here's why. Here's why, like to your point, I think that there is specific value. It has to be a symbiotic relationship between humans and AI. I don't think AI will replace especially human-centric jobs and also especially in a regulated industry like pharma. And here's why. And this actually kind of ties to the compliance piece or like the governance piece that
Yeah.
you brought up earlier, which is ultimately at the end of the day, if you want to leverage AI to help streamline anything, whether it's insights, whether it's personalized outreach, whether it's content, you list anything, you have to make sure it's correct. You have to make sure it's accurate. You have to guide the AI model because an AI model, when you use it, think of it as like an intern. It doesn't have your subject matter expertise. You have to guide it with your subject matter expertise for it to output what you think is going to be ultimately be relevant. And you have to check it. So there's always going to be a human in the loop. And an AI model, guess what? The other thing is AI models were trained from data that guess who created?
We did, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not like sentient. Like
Right.
it's
Right.
always going to be a symbiotic relationship. So I have zero qualms about like AI replacing anyone. And this is why for me, I look for candidates that use AI frequently because I know they're so familiar and they understand that symbiotic relationship. Um, so to those who are maybe afraid of AI taking their jobs, I certainly I don't think that'll happen. So
Well, and I think, there's been a lot of talk about the fear of AI and which jobs are going to get replaced, which ones aren't. And obviously, so many MSLs and medical affairs professionals listening to this podcast, we've talked about it. And I really do think that there's so much nuance to the MSL job into what medical affairs is responsible for doing that I don't think you can replace what medical affairs is responsible for completely through AI. So maybe that's a biased opinion because I make a living off of and from medical affairs and servicing medical affairs organizations. But I do believe that. And you just said the same thing. So we're on the same page. We're definitely in agreement with that.
yeah, I mean, I don't think AI can replace human trust, human relationships, and the expertise because the expertise has to be fed into it,
Right.
and think about like your a customer support, like you call on the phone and you have to click like 10 different numbers or like you go to the chatbot because everyone actually now has AI, chatbots that try to answer
Right.
questions and you're like just like human. Like that's what
Yeah.
I type. I'm like, get me to human, get me to human. I don't want to
Yeah.
be a bot. And like I fundamentally I don't think that an MSL, right, and medical affairs is just such an inherently educational communication
Yep.
relationship building job that it's the least likely to be at risk, in my opinion, to be replaced by AI.
I agree. I agree. Um, but let's talk about resistance to AI, fear of AI, and um, how organizations can get over that. I know when we look at the adoption and the operational side of it, do you think, and I say we're getting back to this, I know I keep coming back to the same thing, but the reluctance piece and the fear of it from a user perspective, do you think it's in the the guidance from the organization, or do you think it's more from the what's the word I'm looking for? The capabilities of the individual. Because there's some people that are just good at certain things and not. But I keep hearing from people like things like, I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not good at it. I haven't adopted it yet. Or it's something I still need to do. I don't understand it that well. To me, that's all part of this fear and resistance and reluctance. Are you seeing that too, or am I just seeing it?
No, I see that 100% as well. And I think a part of I feel like there's kind of a couple of components there. I think there's this the first component of, how do team leaders, right, and managers create an encouraged and safe environment for their teams to experiment with AI. I think there's kind of that component, and there are ways that they can do that to encourage folks who might have that fear to be a bit more open to leveraging AI. And then there's another component of what you're talking about. I feel like, which is, I don't know how it works, or it's like I saw an output from an AI and it was wrong, so therefore all AI is wrong. Like all AI is wrong, and is it on me because I'm not asking the right question, or is it, the AI tool itself is not good. So that's almost like another bucket of what I see. And part of that second bucket, if I was to dig into it, is I have two thoughts there. I think one, fundamentally, no one who ever uses any technology should blame themselves for it. I think the technology
Mm,
should be designed in such a way that it should be easy to use. So I would never want someone to feel like, oh, it seems like this intimidating thing, or like I'm doing a prompt wrong, or I'm doing a question wrong. I think that's, I, this is a product opinion as someone who builds products. I think you should try to design products in such a way where that doesn't happen. But the opposing side of that, of where I see that fear pop up sometimes experientially, where let's say a person has had experience with AI before, whether it's a vendor or internal IT, AI product, and they're like, oh, like I tried it and it was wrong. So like therefore, like I'm more hesitant and more fearful of AI now.
right.
Typically, why that happens is because there hasn't been full transparency, or maybe education on how AI behind the scenes is making a decision. And what I mean by that, maybe trying to think of like a specific example. Let's say I have an AI chatbot and it's plugged into all my field notes, and I ask it a question about a specific therapeutic area and product, and I see that the AI model pulled in some notes about that therapeutic area and product, and then pulled some notes about a completely different product. And now you're like, oh, it's giving me a summary that has like what I was looking for, and then like a mix of what I wasn't looking for. So therefore, AI is wrong. I'm never going to trust it again. Oftentimes that happens because there isn't, there has been education done on how the AI model is making some of those decisions to pull that data. And therefore, if the person doesn't feel in control of being able to tell AI how to pull the right data. And where I've seen it reverse, like if someone comes in very skeptical and then starts to trust it more, it's when there's a feeling, one, an explanation of how AI is doing everything. So there's transparency. And then two, they're able to put in their input and kind of provide the AI model guidance. So if we take that same example, rather than pulling it from those two different sources, it now pulls from like the right source because of their input. And then they see progress, and then they start to build trust. I don't know if that answers your question, but I felt compelled that that is a big pattern of what I also see when
No,
it.
I think that's like obviously the whole purpose of this conversation is what's going to resonate with people, what's going to help people, folks that are listening to this. What can they take away and say, oh, I'm going to try that. Oh, I that's me. And I need to do this. So that's why I bring it up because I feel like there's so much talk about this.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, I think people all feel like they're just not good at it yet to a certain extent. They're getting better. I know I'm getting better. Um, and we all are, but at different levels, at a different pace. I think everybody's going at a different pace, which is why I keep bringing that part of it up to get people to be more comfortable. I'll tell you one of the things that helped me, and
Yeah.
this is actually kind of a funny story. And my wife did this. She told me, she's like, you got to do this. It'll change your relationship with. I use ChatGPT. So you go to ChatGPT or whatever, Gemini or Copilot, whatever you're using, um, and ask it what it wants you to call it.
Okay. All
Give it
right.
a name, right? So
Yeah.
what's going to happen is you're going to say, "Hey, what I said was, I really appreciate all of the help that you give me on a daily basis, and I feel it's appropriate that you have a name. What do you want me to call you?" So it responded back and it's like, "Oh, thank you so much, Tom. That's really nice of you. Just call me Chat GPT or Chat or Chatty." And I was like, "No, I really want something personal
Yeah.
that would fit our relationship." So it came back and it had all these different things. And one of the things it said was something along the lines of, I feel like a lot of what you're trying to do in your role is to help people gain momentum. So there
Mhm.
was a there was a name that had something to do with momentum. So I was like, I'm gonna call you Mo.
Oh, I love that. That's so fun.
So my chat GPT, I call, and Mo loves it. Mo's my buddy now, right? So I have this like different relationship. So
Let's
I
go.
encourage you
Mo.
guys, get comfortable with whatever AI you use and give it a name.
Oh, I love that. That's so, and it almost makes it seem, kind of to the analogy of treat chat like an intern. So it's like, Mo just joined the team. How are
Yeah.
you gonna make sure Mo is successful? You're not gonna tell Mo like you did this one thing wrong, therefore like I'm never gonna trust you again. Do you like
Well,
that
it,
would that would suck. Like how
and it
sad.
really personalized it and
Yeah.
humanized it to the extent that the response was, "I love it. Call me Mo. Whenever you need me, just say, 'Let's go, Mo.'" I
Oh, I love that.
swear to God. So it's just a fun little thing you guys could
Mo's
do.
got personality now. I love that.
Yeah. So getting back to what we were talking about before, um, I know we talked about 95% of the projects fail. So what would you say the 5% are doing? Like why are 5%? What's the secret sauce behind the success rate of the 5%?
I think with the 5%, first they start with the problem. And part of the reason of why starting with the problem versus just, where can we fit in AI and let's just try that is successful is because the second reason, which is you have to take an iterative approach. So if you're solving a critical problem for the team or the business, there's resources and support behind that, right? And there's an understanding of because this problem is critical to solve, like we will take an iterative approach to solve that problem. So, second, with the iterative approach, it is also this understanding that, Mo of your team that's going to join, as AI is a blank slate.
Mm,
So first, what are you going to do with Mo on day one? You're probably going to give him the basic SOPs or her, and then you're going to see how Mo does, and then you're going to be like, hey, this was great, and these are areas for improvement. So now, on day 60, Mo's a lot better. And I would almost look at the AI journey in a similar way. It's not necessarily day zero, it's going to be, perfect, to spec, but you have to take that iterative mindset. So that's the second key of success. And then the third is the change management piece, which really boils down to leadership has to be bought in to this technology. And there has to be, in my opinion, I think org or team-wide support and encouragement, which you can tell, right? If companies have trainings, if they are putting budget behind this, if your managers and leaders are talking about it, ultimately that is a really positive thing because it enables you, depending on the team you're working on, to go and try these things out. So if I had to summarize like very high level, like those would be like the three key characteristics.
So when you say iterative, what I understand that as is there's like first iteration, second
Mhm.
iteration. So it's like a compounding effect. You start here and then you work your way.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And,
Yeah.
and oftentimes what's helpful in that process, because I think a big part of it, especially in this industry, is how do you trust AI? As you need things to be accurate. You can't have AI hallucinating here and there. Like at a certain point, especially for these high priority problems, like you need to be able to rely and trust it. And what's oftentimes helpful in this iterative process is you want to know what you're iterating towards, right? So
Right.
upfront defining what is the bar for quality, accuracy, right? Or any other characteristic that's really important in solving this problem. And part of the iterative process is you're aligning with that rubric until it gets to a certain point where you feel comfortable. So an example is, most humans roughly have like a 3 to 5% error rate. Like even us, we make mistakes too. So if Mo comes in and, he or she is 3 to 5% wrong, that's kind of human level, so maybe that's an acceptable bar. But in some cases, you need it to be 99.999% accurate, right? So it's important to establish that ahead of time. And then that's a really key component of that iterative process.
So I read a book on AI and one of the things that I learned and I want to hear your opinion on this is when starting out on your AI journey, one of the things this guy said to do was start by asking your AI tool, how should I be using you to do XYZ? But be very detailed and explain, this is what I do, this is who I serve, blah, blah, blah. How should I be relying on you to help me? What do you think of like, and obviously you're a prompt genius. I know that that's probably rudimentary, but talk to me about where that fits in the iteration process.
Well, so the ways, yeah, I feel like what you're kind of touching on here is also AI is such a great tool to use to help you generate prompts to help you
Yeah.
brainstorm, right? And ideate, which is kind of what you're pointing to. So when I think about what you just said in the iterative process is you can't do that and you can ask it like, hey, for this, problem that we're trying to solve, right? I know literature review takes a long time or patient identification. What do you think are good quality criteria for what an AI model needs to have to fulfill its job in solving this problem. And likely
Mm,
you're going to see that it'll spit out things, and some things you're gonna be like, I don't know if that's relevant, but that's okay. But if there's one or two that are, you can continue to riff off of it, right?
yeah.
So I love that. Leverage AI to help you with that process.
Well, you brought it up. You just said it. There's the other part of that is ask AI to give you the prompt
Mhm.
for it to solve whatever problem or give you the details you need. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wait a second. Because sometimes you're like, okay, what's this prompt going to look like? And so sometimes just like, please give me the prompt because I need to do this. Right. Um, so I don't know. I think it's it's a journey. It's like perfect. This conversation is exactly what it is. It's a journey.
It is. And I was gonna say to your last point, I actually just lost my thought on
Because I keep interrupting you. I can't
oh,
help
this
myself.
is no, all good. Yeah, so this is it because this is what I consistently also see in trainings and as well as in trade shows, which is you try to educate on the concept of what is a good prompt. You want it to be detailed, you want it to take a role, et cetera, just like you would tell your intern Mo, right, on the first day. So that can be intimidating because you're like, wait, but my job is not to write essays. So like how am I going to make, Copilot or ChatGPT accessible on a day-to-day basis? Well, great news. You can ask GPT to write you that essay so that you can use that to then get to the ultimate outcome that you want. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Vera, you are amazing. We are at time. Wow, we went a little bit long, but we had to because we had a lot to cover. And I knew that this was going to be an awesome conversation. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom, for having me. This was such a fun discussion. I learned a
Yeah,
lot too about on the recruiting side. Thank
we're
you.
gonna do it again. We're gonna
Yeah,
do it again. So, all right, guys. As always, thank you for your support. If you got value in this, please share it with others. Thank you for all of your comments and connections and all the stuff you do on LinkedIn. And appreciate you guys. Appreciate all your support. Love you all. See you next time.